Our next session is our workshop, and we're very, very pleased to have 3 locals be delivering the Social Media for Curators 101, Know Your Platforms. I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation. We have moderating and also as a participant, the Executive Director of Marketing and Communications from the Detroit Institute of Arts. She will be very adept at answering lots of fun questions because I think she's been through everything one can go through. And that's Christine Kloostra. We have Stephanie Elton, who is the Social Media and Digital Communications Manager at the Toledo Museum of Art, and Michael Kulick, the Web and Digital Media Manager for MOCAD, the Museum of Contemporary Art Detroit. So they're going to talk for a bit, and then please, it's going to be a great Q&A. Ask any questions. No question is silly. No question is above anybody or too smart for the topic, so ask away. Thank you.
My name is Christine Kloostra. As Judith said, I am the Executive Director of Marketing and Communications at the DIA. I would like to first get a little poll so that we know what we're dealing with in the room. How many of you are on Facebook? How many of, okay, put your hands down. How many of you are on Facebook as a curator versus as a person?
Okay.
A lot less.
Okay. Yeah.
How many of you are on Twitter? Fewer. Okay. Hands down. Instagram. Okay. Pinterest. A few more. Oh, I can see some hands go up every time. Tumblr. Oh, I'm gonna. Here's your last one where no hands will go up. Reddit. Yeah. All right. Snapchat.
Love it.
I didn't, there weren't any 16-year-olds in the room, so I wasn't going to ask that one. I'm going to talk a little bit about our panelists here, and then we're going to let Mike do the first half of the presentation. Stephanie joined the Toledo Museum of Art in May 2013. She is the manager of social media and digital communications. She's a 10-year veteran of the digital and new media field, and she's developed strategies for clients in the music industry, healthcare, and public service. In her first year at TMA, she oversaw the design and launch of the museum's visual literacy website, which I'm curious to know a little more about, and expanded the museum's online audience by incorporating new platforms into its communication plan. Mike, over all the way to the left, is the Web and Digital Media Manager at the Museum of Contemporary Art Detroit, which we call MOCAD. He manages the digital channels and communications for MOCAD, including social media, web design, and development, press releases, and e-newsletters. Because MOCAD employees wear many hats, I have a former one on my staff. He also manages data and fulfillment for members. He's a proud Detroiter, and you can find him on all social media channels, including Reddit, and by email I'll let you just get his email address from him later, because otherwise I'd have to spell it. So all right, I'm going to turn it over to Mike.
Thank you, Christine. So you took my first hand checking of people, so that's fine.
I told you I was going to do it.
No, it's all good. So I'm going to talk just real quickly about all of those different channels that we have available to us as individuals and then also as institutions and curators. Let this go? Cool. Oh, yeah. Cool. So my first thing, audience. Understanding your audience is one of the most critical things that I've learned managing social media and then also in my degree program at Michigan State. It can be anything from your direct friends, right? You're just trying to let your friends know, hey, I'm going to this event, to followers of your museum, your gallery, what have you, that you have a very important initiative coming up. So understanding your audience and making sure that you know your primary, secondary, and tertiary audiences will really help mitigate which social media channel you're going to go to first. There we go. So yes, like I said, primary, curators, artists, press, secondary, visitors, members, of course, everyone's got a board that they probably need to take care of. And then lastly, foundations, academics, and this is again kind of more from our standpoint as social media curators for our institutions, but you also can kind of think about it for your friends and stuff as well. Secondarily, you got to know your purpose. Making sure that you are making sure that you're getting to the right audience and getting the right purpose at the same time will make it so that everything else falls into place. So is it getting people to come to your exhibition opening? Is it making sure that the press knows that you've got a really, really great exhibition coming in the pipeline or that was just announced? Making sure that you know your purpose while you know your audience will then we'll just go right to content, making sure you know your content. So with social media channels, there's any number of restrictions put on, things that work best, things that don't work so well for each channel. Making sure you have your content under wraps and knowing what you're going to put out, when you're going to put out, for who you're going to put it out, can really change the game for how effective you can use these basically free tools. So the big five. We went through the hand raising, so I won't make you guys do it again. But these are the big five for me, and I think for most museums. There's a great couple of articles about which are the easiest to use for museums, and so this isn't the big five. But Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, and YouTube, all general notes about these, and I'll go into them a little bit more. But that is pretty much the order in which you need to take preference when you're thinking about your social media channels. So the first one's Facebook. Everyone had their hand raised. Not everyone had it for their curator lives, but it's big, right? It's the biggest one. It's $1 billion. Everyone knows Mark Zuckerberg. It's the reason why I have a job today, because I started just posting a lot of Facebook articles and got really good at it. And then I was like, oh, I can go to school for that. That's crazy. Oh, I can work at MOCAD. That's awesome. So, as you navigate the field, you understand that certain things work really well, some don't. The quiz about what Game of Thrones character you are, probably not going to do that much for you. But sharing, a great event, a relevant news article, and understanding when the people, knowing your audience, right, when the people that you want to connect with are online. So for example, for MOCAD, we do a lot better with early morning posts on Facebook because more people are checking it before they go to work or right when they get up. Whereas literally an hour later, 10:30, 11 o'clock, we're lost, right? Like people are already in their groove, they're working, they're not going to be surfing, and our posts can get buried, right? So understanding your audience and knowing when they're going to be engaging, especially on Facebook, is really key. One of the big changes that I'm sure some folks are starting, if they've ever managed the page element of a Facebook page, is that it's a pay-to-play operation now, right? They are trying to make money. So they're squeezing out a lot of people. So understanding how to get your organic growth and making sure that the people that you're most connected with, your board, friends, family, are also helping you and engaging with your posts and sharing them can really make sure that your Facebook things don't get buried and you don't have to necessarily follow the pay-to-play method. The next two that are my personal favorite are Twitter and Instagram. Instagram's great. It is a Facebook entity now. It was purchased, right? But it is really our fastest growing channel at MOCAD, and I think in general, I think more and more people are coming onto it every day. It's quick, it's easy, it's a picture, it's a little bit of a filter, and call it good. Now, I will say anyone who's using filters, you can use too much, so be careful. A filter, sorry, thank you. Instagram is a photo sharing service, social media network, that is a basic photo editing software that then creates a feed for the people that you follow. So one of the things that made it Instagram really popular was that first it was iPhone exclusive to start, and then it went through this iteration of becoming more and more available, and when it did that, they were launched with a set of, I think, 12, 14 pre-made photo filters that were reminiscent of what you would see like a professional photographer do. But all you had to do was hit the button. It kind of amplified your colors of certain areas, made it easier for you to focus on things. And so you can do some fading, some light editing, and everyone knows when you take a phone photo, it's the lighting's not really right. But if you just amp it up, then you can do it and it looks a little better. However, you can't overdo it, and then it makes things look kind of cartoonish. So that's something that we always take care of. And then of course, actually, as you guys are talking about art and curation, photo credits, right, are a big deal, and taking pictures of pieces are also a big deal. MOCAD's fortunate that our current exhibitions, we don't have any issues, so it's great when people take photos and share it, and we'll repost it and reshare it or like it. But it can be tricky, right? And you want to make sure that, actually, and why I paired this with Twitter is because hashtags are a big use on both of these networks. So anything, hashtag MOCAD, if you guys are out there listen to me right now. Both of these networks utilize hashtags as a metadata form. So if there is a trending idea or event, Twitter's really great for that. All of our openings, we try to have a sustaining hashtag, so that way we can kind of watch how people are coming into the event, taking photos, making sure that they're, if they're having any concerns. Like we had an event where one of our staff members said, the bathroom's at the wall, it's past the white wall, which is not helpful. So somebody tweeted that out, and we said, hey, duly noted. Next, we promised to put up labels next time, right? And it was fine. But it's one of those things that, because we were able to watch the MOCAD hashtag for the event, we were able to see somebody having a concern or an issue. Most of the time, it's people just checking in, having a good time, taking photos. And I think it's a really great way to curate some of the events and things that people are experiencing at our events, our exhibitions. Does anyone have any questions more about Twitter and Instagram before I go? Yeah.
I'm thinking that this will probably affect a lot of people here, which is I'm interested in knowing about rights and reproductions and licensing issues. So are there differences, let's say if I post something as myself on Twitter and it features an artwork in an exhibition versus if the museum represents and shows the exact same image? And things that are under copyright, what are the rules in terms of being able to post that stuff on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook? What can we show and what can't we?
Sure, that's a great question. I'll give my response, and then I think if you guys want to jump in. For our part, because these are services and Facebook is an entity owner, if you post anything on it, you no longer hold the exclusive rights to it, right? So if we have a photo, say, that a photographer took of our building, I don't post those, right? I post the ones that are either the rights have lapsed or we have the rights to, and we're okay with giving out. But if it's something that's specific, we just don't as an institution. However, like you said, with exhibitions and things, and like I said earlier, we're fortunate that most of ours are open for photography. I know that's not the case. The no photography rule holds, and I think that there's, rules that you can talk about with your patrons or visitors. I think I'll take you guys' lead on that for that answer.
For me, it's more like if I'm taking a picture of an artist's work, do I need to ask their permission, or taking a picture of an art exhibition other than my own, like at another extent, do I need to get their permission? What's kosher as far as asking permission?
Oh, sorry. My question was if as a curator or individual, if I take a picture of an artist's work or assuming photography is permissible in an exhibition at a museum other than my own, what is best practice as far as do I need to ask that museum to use that image on my Instagram? Is it proper to ask that artist? And if so, how detailed does the caption need to be to, for either politeness or legality?
Well, I always make sure whenever I'm taking my own photos, title and date and name at the very least, because sometimes you do have character restrictions, right? Like on Twitter, you can't go more than 140. Do you guys have anything specific to say to that?
I mean, at Student Museum of Art, we have an open photo policy, except for special exhibitions. And oftentimes, people who are taking pictures, they don't credit the artist, but we are monitoring that, and so we also will comment and tell them, that's a great photo of, our Apollo, the Matisse mural we have, and that sort of thing. We can also encourage that behavior as well. It's not a huge issue to us because we do have that open photography policy, but we found that other bloggers who do talk about our works, they'll caption because they come from more of a media journalism background. So there isn't really a right or wrong way to do it. I mean, obviously transparency is great and providing as much information as you know is wonderful, but sometimes people don't have that information. They're just a visitor.
I'm good.
I still don't.
Sure.
Let's say I'm doing an exhibition and we paid for licensing.
Right.
For the web, for our web advertising for 5 images by one artist. do the same copyright restrictions apply to using Facebook?
Yeah.
Okay, so I can't
If you
just
have permission
post.
to use it online, you can, if you have permission to use it online, you can use it on Facebook.
All right, but if I don't have a right to
Then-
use it online, I cannot post it on Facebook.
Institutionally, I certainly wouldn't. Yeah.
Thank you.
But if you have permission to use it online, but you put it on Facebook, does then, what were you saying before was that Facebook then also is allowed to use it? Is that how that works, that they have anything posted on Facebook, Facebook then owns? Is that what you were saying about your building architecture situation?
Yeah, to an extent. So my general rule when I'm posting anything is that if I don't have the rights for it, don't post it. But if I feel comfortable or have the internet rights for it, then go ahead and share it, because it's content that you want your visitors or guests to engage with. If it's something that might be time sensitive, get it up and take it down. But Facebook doesn't delete anything, right? Social media, right? It's out there, right? People can screen capture, they can download, they can take from that medium. It's an uncontrolled medium, so it is something you have to be careful about, I think, in general.
They're not particularly high-resolution images, so
Right.
it'd be hard to...
That's the other thing we
Right.
use. Anything online is a low res, so even if someone tried to reproduce it, they would end up with a really crummy final product.
Yeah.
And we also sometimes we'll watermarks, we'll put like the TMA, our notch detail in the corner, another way to kind of make sure that the photo can't be used in a purpose that it's not meant to be.
This is for Mike at MOCAD and I guess any others in here. I'm curious if any museums are now asking artists, when you're working with living artists, to put it in the contract that they will allow photographs to be taken within the exhibition, and if people are doing that, and what's the response been by artists?
Well, I can speak to at least our last exhibition that we just closed. I think some of you were able to check out State of Exception, which was a U of M Institute for Humanities show that came to MOCAD. And at first we had a no photography clause, but we were able to negotiate an open photography licensing with them. And I actually think it went over much better because we were able to do that. There's this stark kind of contrasting big backpack wall that overwhelmingly was sent to us, reposted, retweeted, shared. People checked in, took those photos, and shared it as well. So I think that it is something that's worthwhile to let your visitors and guests be able to take photos, yeah. Okay, good. So the next two that I'll talk about just really quickly are Tumblr and YouTube. Now, both of these are a little bit harder networks to work with. I'm big fans of both of them, and I think everyone uses YouTube on a regular basis, but not necessarily everyone uses it as a channel. MOCAD's channel is really robust, and it's something that we've worked really hard on in creating a video archive as a non-collecting institution. That is kind of our archive online, from events to exhibition openings to artist and curator talks. However, it is more expensive. You need to have a videographer, you need to have somebody who can, spend both the time taking the footage and editing. And then Tumblr is a really great one that I enjoy. However, it was purchased by Yahoo, I think, a year and a half or so ago. And it's starting to kind of become a little bit more corporatized, but it is the largest art-centric network, I believe. And that is just from our personal network at MOCAD. There's more artists available.
Can you explain a little bit what exactly Tumblr is
Sorry,
for those
I will.
who don't
Yes,
know?
absolutely.
Thank you.
So Tumblr is a blogging platform that's a little more robust than a Facebook or a Twitter in that you are a blogger and you have your own blog. It's much easier to share and repost content from other blogs that you follow because there's a dashboard that's very white and blue, very basic, and you roll through and you get these great images, photos, videos, what have you, from the channels that you follow. So for example, we follow U of M Institute for Humanities, we follow all these museums, we follow TA, and then, so whatever they're posting, you get, but it's a stream, right? It's a chronological stream. And so we post our pictures. It's very similar in effect to our Facebook and Twitter kind of mashed together, where it's things that we want people to know, but you have like a more long form that you can write down. You can have longer writings. Pictures are really accessible and easy to use again on that network. But for curating, and at least for my part as the social media manager, that's a great way for me to keep up with news in a very quick manner. You know, it's 4 or 5 scrolls, and that's like, you know, the day's kind of news in the contemporary art world. So it's easier to keep up with stuff. If there's a Mike Kelly article that came out, you know, I'm able to check and like grab that much faster than, say, a Facebook where I might have to go search out something, or a Twitter where if I'm not paying attention exactly at that moment, it's probably buried. So I enjoy it quite a bit, and I'm not sure how much you guys use it, but that's been a big growth network for us as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's very visual, it's very image and video focused. So a lot of artists use it as a way to just show their portfolio. There's different templates that you can use, and you can arrange things on a grid, or like Mike said, it's just an infinite scroll down the screen.
What is NSFW?
Not safe for work. Not safe for work. So there might be things that some might consider pornographic. And that's what I was alluding to earlier. When Yahoo purchased Tumblr was famous for being an all or nothing, like whatever you want blogging platform. And so when Yahoo purchased them, they've started to kind of divvy out, like, okay, we're not going to close you, but you're going to be siloed into this other section. You know, and that can be an issue for art people. You know, if you deal in nudes, you can be marked as a not safe for work blog, even though it's, you know, an art-focused entity, you know. And there's been some battles back and forth with that. They're still trying to work out the details on that. But I think that, you know, like Twitter, if you say something offensive, you can get marked, you can get blocked, right? If you are posting hate messages on Facebook, they will take your account, you know. Tumblr is a blogging platform that allows for very much free speech, but right now they're in that mix of like, you know, what do we do with pornography things? So. Any other questions about YouTube and Tumblr before I kind of wrap up my section? Okay. So, of course, there's more. Vimeo is a great emerging video source that we've been using. SoundCloud is really great for audio, and we do it's kind of a podcast for MOCAD. We just started it. We're pretty excited because we can do audio recordings that people can listen to or download and listen to on their own time, which is a great medium and great way to give content to your guests. Google+, if you're a Google employee, you probably have to use it. Otherwise, probably not. Pinterest. I'm not a big Pinterest person, but I know a lot of people are. A lot of people keep a lot of good boards. And there are great boards about MOCAD that I've checked out, which we thank users for doing and we'll share. But that's one of those things that it's one of those, you gotta pick and choose your audience and your content, right? If you can focus on 5, at least institutionally, that's what MOCAD has the capacity to handle. We focus on 5, right? And we make sure that each channel is getting attention every day, whether it's commenting on a YouTube comment, excuse me, replying on something on Twitter, making sure we get our Facebook post out in the morning, making sure an Instagram picture gets put up, and or new people followed or followed back. You know, it's a constant and evolving thing, right? And it's something that makes it so that people can connect with the museum, even if they can't physically be at the museum. Every exhibition or even every year, they still feel good about knowing that MOCAD is doing great work. Question?
I'm wondering what kind of staff you devote to this purpose, and also if you've been able to track the number of online visitors versus the number of in-person visitors in the museum, and what the difference between those two is.
That's a great question. So as of right now, myself, we have a videographer, we have our graphic designer, and then I have 2 interns for the summer as far as like social media, right? There's a lot of people who do a lot of things, and everyone is paying attention. So if somebody sees a great article, you know, they'll send it over to me, right? We're pretty close and tight-knit staff. So if something pops up that I didn't catch, they send it over and it's great, it's really helpful. But I like to keep like a social media hopper, of just like good articles that are easy to share, that like relate to us, but may not be like super pressing, to get out. And of course, we always try to like do some of the like Throwback Thursday. If you guys don't know about this, it's a great little tool on Instagram and Twitter where people tend to post like really embarrassing pictures from their childhood. But we can do that because we have old exhibitions, right? So that's like a fun way. Or like our old building before we got repainted. That was like a really, really great post for us. And so some of that's like kind of off the cuff and doing it, but to more succinctly answer, it's about 4 people. And then converting online users to in-person visits is actually our big goal for the summer and our digital strategy. We do have our Google Analytics, and I do a lot of work with that as well, managing the website. We have a lot more online visitors than we do in-person visitors on a given month. Openings are different for the weeks and stuff like that, but as far as a general month goes, we get more online. And a lot of it's for our archives, which is really exciting, and we're really excited to move towards a better archiving system. But again, 4 people. So like trying to do those like digital projects take a little bit longer. Okay.
My question actually stems a little bit from yours. How do you feel about the consistency of voice? My museum we're experimenting with this, but it's right now marketing is doing all of our stuff, but they have gotten really good responses from like our installers doing Instagram images of an installation process. They want curators to talk about our trips on Twitter, but then there's also, they feel like it needs to go back through marketing so it's a consistent voice, and the rest of us sort of have opinions about that. Do you think that having a lot of different voices on one feed is good, or do you think we should have our own identities as part of that museum's shouting out? What do you think about that?
I have a mixed answer for you. I think that a consistent voice in marketing is really important. So for our press releases, for our larger entities like Facebook, I prefer having stuff go through me and going like because it's a conversation, right? And it's understanding your audience. Like who is this going to? This is going to all of our local press. We need them to get these events in their calendars, right? Okay, this is going to our biggest list of people on Facebook, so we need to make sure that this is a little more conversational than, say, a press release, but that people feel like okay to comment and share and like do something with it. Some of the other channels, I'm more like willing to let things open up, but I think that especially for a small institution, it's easier for things to go through one person. But I have worked at my old job in East Lansing. We had it all over the place. Everyone posted it all the time, which was okay, but you could tell when it changed, right? So as an end user, as somebody who is visiting the digital identity of this institution, when you have different tones and different messages coming out, it looks haphazard, I think would be a good way to describe it. It's not necessarily jumbled or not professional, but it looks mixed, right? Which I think can be okay, but for my part, I think it deters from the message that you're trying to create and cultivate a strong audience, right?
I sort of have a follow-up question. So I've also noticed some museums do they have an artist take over their Twitter or take over. So you think if you do something like that, it should be sort of announced as a guest, so you're keeping with that consistency of voice?
Absolutely. I think my favorite one was when Stephen Colbert took over Sweden's Twitter, right? No one knew Sweden had a Twitter, and then they had 1.5 million followers, right? So if you announce it, it's great, and it can totally build, and I think that's actually a really great tool to use for sure. Do you guys, before I finish?
TMA is a much larger institution than MOCAD. We actually have several different groups, doing essentially their own thing, but marketing has a hand in that just to make sure things are, meeting brand standards and that sort of thing. But our young professional group obviously has a different tone than, our general museum message. So they have their own Facebook page, and they're speaking the language of young professionals. I monitor it to make sure no one's breaking any rules or anything. Same with our glass studio. Our hot shop has its own Facebook page, and glassblowers have their own language, and they know how to speak to each other. So and they actually have a volunteer who manages that for them, and we write posts together and make sure everything looks right, got the images that we need, and he manages it from that point once I approve the copy, essentially.
Yeah, and I will mention that we also, we have our teen council, and that the teens run that entirely. You know, I make sure that they're not like, I can control it in case something does happen, but it is entirely on the teens to make their events and share it and send it to their friends, and it clearly has a different tone because
Right.
teenagers have their own language as well. My last thought, you know, knowing your audience, purpose, and content for each social media channel is really key to understanding how to utilize it for both your personal and professional goals. We got a last question?
Yes, my question's about something that was touched on at the beginning, which is the idea of being on Facebook as a curator. This is actually something I kind of toyed with myself. I'm like, well, you know, I'd set up a separate profile, make it public, but then I kind of abandoned the idea because I just wasn't sure how it would work or how to build content on there or how to work with the museum to use it to the museum's benefit. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
I do not.
I'm going to take that
I
one.
think you should.
Okay, great.
I think a good example of sort of a model of how to do that is to look at authors. Most authors, I have friends who've written books, they have their personal accounts where I know what they had for dinner last week, but then they have an author page, and that's stuff about their books or where they went on a trip to write their next book. And I don't think you need to worry so much about, you know, having institutional approval of that. I mean, that's you and your personality, and if you went to another museum, you would want to take that entity with you. I think it seems sort of overwhelming, but if you go and look, authors are really good at it. I would check out a few of their pages and see how they're managing, you know, 2 profiles pretty easily.
We got 2 more up here, Christine.
Okay.
My question was kind of like Courtney's. If you have, let's just say you don't have like an institutional curator profile and you just have your personal one. And I'm not putting crazy pictures on my Facebook, but I do put pictures of my daughter or something on it. And sometimes I get requests for people that I just kind of know tangentially through the museum that are, you know, repeat visitors that I see over and over again. And they want to friend me on Facebook. And I'm like, you know, I don't really want you seeing pictures of my kid. But not that they're creepy or anything,
right.
but you know what I mean.
You want to keep those 2 worlds
You just kind of
separate.
want to keep those 2 worlds separate, but you also don't want to like unfriend them
You
and
can
them
add
think,
them
oh,
to
I
a-
tried to be your, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you can add them. You can create special lists of friends.
Okay.
I had, in my previous job, I had clients and they wanted to friend me. And I was the same thing. I didn't really want my clients seeing, you know, me out at midnight with my girlfriend.
Right.
So I just segregated them all into a separate list.
Okay.
And I would have my posts, you know, generally all of my posts would not be visible to them. But if it was something relevant, you can just change who sees your posts.
Okay.
There's a little button that's on the
Yeah.
bottom left corner.
So along the same lines, you would maybe recommend doing that. Like sometimes at my museum, it's a small museum, so our director would be like, everybody share this on your Facebook page. Well, I don't, you know, my actual friends, I don't want them just feeling like I'm using this to harass them to come to the Dixon
You
all the time.
should harass them
I know.
to come.
So
That's what your marketing department wants you to do.
Right.
But yes, you could do the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah. You
Great.
can
Good to know.
you can create, I think, as many separate lists as you
Yeah.
want. Yeah.
Can I ask even another follow-up?
Yes.
So I think you're right that authors have personal pages and professional pages, and what you were just saying about segregating your, you know, for us as well. But I imagine sometimes it'd be really great as a curator to go around to galleries and then have a really active Twitter page or account or whatever the terminology is. And then I don't at all because I realize that I'm doing that institutionally. That would be really the only point of doing it. Even if I'm developing a little bit of a following around me, it's to draw attention, you know, to my role and my institution. And the problem is that that you suddenly realize that you're so accountable for everything you say publicly, and that you want to be so careful about any kinds of critiques or, you know, these are the people in the small little art world that we have to work with for years and years and years. And so then you realize why you don't bother, you know, why you're so diplomatic and reserved about your opinions, because they get around really quickly. And as curators, it's surprising, I think, at least to me, I'm sure it is to a lot of others of us, how much our opinion matters when it finally gets back to you that you said something. You're like, really, that was worth, repeating 10 times to
And then it's a
get
completely
all the way
different opinion
back
by
to
the
me.
time it gets back to you.
Yeah, so, I'd love to hear if there's an example of someone who is able to do something, and not an independent curator, because I'm really talking about the institutional responsibility.
It's far more common to see independent or even galleries as opposed to museum curators with their own accounts. I think it doesn't necessarily have to be. I want to. The idea that your posts are serving your institution, I'm not sure is entirely true. I would prefer to think of them as serving the genre of art that you are a curator for, not necessarily your institution. And maybe if you approach it more as, what can I teach people about this, or what can I explain to people about this, as opposed to, I think this is really ugly, and then it comes back to you. Think of it more in service of the art as opposed to your opinion, without it being, you don't want it to be teachy, you want it to be funny and social, but that might be a less nerve-wracking way to ease into it.
Oh.
Oh, I got one more down here a second. Hold on.
Yeah. I had,
Okay, and then we'll.
Oh, I was just going to say, John, I think it's one of those things, if you follow somebody like Franklin Servants on Instagram, it's just,
he just posts a picture of something he likes and he says the name of the artist and that's it. You don't have to continue, write about it or, make a remark. You can just say, all you do is take the picture. So obviously you're interested in it. Maybe you don't like it, maybe you do, but you're just highlighting it. I think that's that's what I do as a curator and just also as a person that likes taking pictures of things that I think are awesome, so.
You could do an artwork of the day.
Yeah, something like that.
There's certain, especially news organizations, the little disclaimer, tweets and photos are my own and not endorsements. It's a very easy little bio line that can hopefully alleviate any concern that if I retweet this person, then I'm endorsing their art or possibly the news article, right? And it's maybe it's false, right? But if you just want to share it, just take a picture and share it, you can do that.
And being transparent will go a long ways in the digital world. People can detect not so honest and their BS meters are pretty high. So as long as you're transparent and you're clear about your affiliations and your intent of what you're sharing and creating, that'll go a long ways.
I got one right here, a second.
Oh, I had a question about frequency. In order to develop, say, for example, a good faithful following on a blog or Facebook, you have to log in or check in with a certain amount of frequency. If you're looking to, develop a robust following on, say, Instagram, or what would you say is successful without being overkill?
I would say it's less the number, the quantity, more the quality of what you're producing and sharing and putting out there online. If there was a simple formula, every brand in the world would be doing it. And as Mike touched upon in his presentation, Facebook has changed basically how the game is played there. And as a nonprofit, we're having some troubles. Our content before was getting great engagement numbers, and since Facebook made this algorithm change, we're finding our numbers have plummeted. 1% to 2% of our audience is seeing what we're doing, and it's the same content that before was very engaging, while Facebook is saying now it's not. So we're trying to figure out how do we adjust with this, and we're actually have explored different platforms. We're still using Facebook, but we're looking at other ways on Instagram and Pinterest. Blogging, video, other ways we can communicate and engage with our online audience.
I have a question.
It's sort of a general rule, the ephemeral stuff like Twitter, you could tweet, every half hour and no one's going to probably be bothered by that unless you're the only person they're following. But Facebook, we just 2 times a day tops, mostly once.
I have a question about the comments and posts that other people put on your institutional Facebook pages or on any articles, and sometimes too it's spam. Artists
posting pictures of things they painted.
Exactly.
Yeah, we get a lot of those.
How do you respond to that? Is it something that you leave up? Is it something that you take down? Is it something that you comment? You comment against, or
We hide them. There's in Facebook, there's a choice to hide it from your page, and it means the person who put it there still sees it, and their friends still see it, but none of your fans, none of the other people are going to see it. If it's really, if it's something legitimately offensive, we'll delete it altogether, but that almost never happens.
But even if it's something like, sometimes there's a bit of a scandal that involves a museum that people just start posting.
I know nothing about that.
It's an open platform for people to try and engage
if people
with the
want
museum.
to write on my Facebook page, my grandmother is going to have to eat cat food for the rest of her life because you won't sell your Monet. We leave that there.
Yeah.
It's part of the transparency, and it's part of being authentic. And it's part of having a dialogue. We don't respond, but we'll leave it there. And what we've found is that other people will respond. Other members of our community will say, hey, so-and-so, what about? And they will start to have a conversation, and we stay out of it.
Yeah. It's actually something I bring up in my presentation, but developing what I call rules of engagement, essentially. So you find a comment, and you start from there, is it positive or negative? It's negative. Is this person just looking for a fight? Are they an internet troll? If they are, you ignore them. You don't give, that's what they want your attention. If it's a legitimate complaint, a customer service issue, definitely, try to fix that situation and make that person become, lead them on that path to become an advocate for your institution.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same we do. Any like submissions, we just don't respond to, because that's not how we do our submission process. But yeah, anything, generally, we've had somebody says something and then other people come and rally around, which is great. But I do keep all the notifications on my phone. So if we do get something that is negative, anything, it comes to me. And then if it's positive or, neutral, and there's nothing to do with it. But if it's negative, then we can respond to it, especially if it's a customer service issue or something like that.
And there's also times too when, your Facebook wall isn't the place to be having this conversation, and you can try and take that offline, And we had an incident last week. We had our Kentucky Derby party. It's an annual event, and we sold out of bourbon tasting tickets. And we had someone on Twitter who was very unhappy about that. He saw that it was a limited number of tickets, and you should have purchased them 2 days ago. I can't say that to him, but he was very upset. Found his email address. He actually works in another nonprofit in Toledo, and I was like, hey, sorry about that. I understand why you're frustrated, but we're out of tickets. We still hope you'll come to the party if you have this going on. Social is very much a customer service tool. And he was very happy, and he apologized for being a jerk. So.
Can I take this one last question, and then I was watching the clock, and then Stephanie's going to do her presentation.
Can you just describe how LinkedIn fits in with this, or is it all over?
No, it's not. LinkedIn is actually one of my favorite social networks, to be honest. In the past year and a half, 2 years, they've done, the powers that be of LinkedIn have made major leads to making their social network more social. It's not just the place you go when you need to look for a job anymore. You can network, you can meet up with people. Their LinkedIn groups are a great way to connect with peers, to learn, to research, and to kind of position yourself as a thought leader in your field. Businesses can actually use LinkedIn now. We use it as a way to further get exposure for our press releases. It's depending on the audience you're trying to reach for an event, sometimes we'll post things there, but since I've been there at the museum for over a year, our LinkedIn followers for our company page have increased by I'd say 75%. So it's amazing. People are actively searching and looking for ways to connect with institutions, with museums, with thought leaders. So LinkedIn is not dead.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah, I guess so. All right. Okay. So I'm Stephanie Elton. Again, I'm the social media and digital communications manager at the Toledo Museum of Art. And I just first want to say thank you so much for having us here. I've lived in Toledo my whole life, and getting to work at that institution is still kind of a dream come true for me. I'm actually, with my presentation, we touched upon a lot of the points in it in our questions that we had after Mike's presentation. I'd like to come back to those and also build upon some of the things that Mike had talked about. So let's see. All right. Oh, geez, it is touchy. Okay, social media for curators, 101. So Mike went and touched upon some of the 5, big platforms that most people use. And what I like to do is talk about the content aspect of social media. So there you go. So, what is social media? There's lots of definitions out there, but they all kind of boil down to one thing, a website or an application, basically any digital space where you can have a conversation with someone. So comment sections on news articles are technically, by my definition, a social media space. And with that in mind, Mike touched upon some of the bigger networks out there, but this is a diagram I like to bring out every once in a while. And on this little chart here, there's actually over 160 different social media networks. Some are very niche-based, some of them are very specific, but you start to think about this. Give me my water, please.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Sorry. You start thinking about all the space. I mean, the internet is essentially infinite, and there's different networks, different spaces to talk, to converse, and before you know it, you kind of start to feel like this. Actually, that was me on my drive up here when I got on the lodge. I'm not used to that much traffic, so. But it's easy to get lost. There's lots to navigate. It's a big space. There's lots of paths you can go down. Some people feel like this, analysis paralysis. They just don't even know what to do, and they stop thinking about it. Like, there's so much I can talk about, so many people I need to connect with. And then sometimes people feel like this. Just a sad, defeated little puppy dog, right? You just give up. Why even bother? I mean, I only have 10 Twitter followers at this point. What's the point anymore? Well, what I would like to do today is kind of talk about the content aspect of things and how to kind of get started, get on the right path to using social media by answering these 5 different questions up here, and then also touch upon some key takeaways at the very end, some tips and tricks that I've learned in my career so far. So with that in mind, you'll go from feeling like this to this. Very confident, ready to start your social media journey. So the why. That's the question that I start with any sort of project. Why are we doing this? Why social media? Why do I want to get involved? And that's a very personal question to you guys. What's my purpose in this field? What am I trying to do? What am I trying to accomplish? Are you trying to, share your insight, your commentary on museum industry itself? Are you wanting to share your thoughts and your expertise on your specific area of study? It's very much a very personal connection. We move on to the who. I couldn't help myself with this picture. The who is the audience. Mike touched upon this and gave a great, really who you're trying to talk to is going to depend, it's going to affect where you end up, how you use social media. Is your who, is it your contemporaries, is it your peers? Is it, your community in general where you live? Is it other museum professionals? Is it something completely unrelated to being a curator? And we get to the what. This is when we start talking about the content. What is it that you're trying to say? What is it you're trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? Is it, you've spent your life studying a certain area and you have so much information that you want to share, that's your what. And whatever it is that you decide what your focus is going to be is going to affect the how. And this is where the creative things come into play, so you know what you're trying to say, who you're trying to reach, and why you're doing it. The how is the shape. How is your content packaged? Do you do a video blog? Do you use Instagram and do pictures? Are you using Pinterest to curate beautiful boards full of works of art that you love? Is it a Facebook post? Is it, are you using microblogging like Twitter? I mean, the how is the way that your content is packaged and delivered. And then we finally get to the where. So after you get these other questions answered, the where is the platform. So Mike had talked about Facebook, Twitter, using Tumblr, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube. We mentioned Reddit beforehand. And think back to that diagram, with just 160 different platforms on there, there's even more. And then finally, I want to touch upon these key takeaways, things that I've learned having done social media for little tiny bands and record labels, to a major nonprofit healthcare system in Toledo, to a major furniture manufacturer, to the public library in Toledo. First thing to keep in mind is that your time is valuable. Social media takes time. I mean, you're writing, you're publishing, you're scheduling, you're researching, you're connecting with others. You know what your bandwidth is. You don't have to be all things to all people on social either. If you just want to do one network, that's totally fine. You don't have to spread yourself thin to feel successful. Number 2, an editorial calendar. This is my best friend at work. How mine takes shape is just a giant spreadsheet by day, and I list time, the platform, the campaign, the copy, any materials that I need, has it been scheduled, that sort of thing, and like notes to follow up, that kind of stuff. So it can be as complicated as that. It could just be a simple Word doc that, I need to post, this blog entry by, Friday. Make sure I have my first draft done, that sort of thing. This was actually brought up during the Q&A, but remember that when you are online, you are visible. Anything that you publish essentially lives on the internet forever. So it's important to be transparent. It's important to be correct and accurate. And it's important to make your affiliations clear. That you're speaking on your own behalf, not on behalf of the gallery or the museum that you work for. I brought this up during the Q&A as well, but the rules of engagement, this is a very critical tool. Working in PR, you have to prepare for pretty much any crisis that comes along. I'm not saying that you're going to have to deal with that, but as you become more active, you're going to get possibly comments, retweets, things that aren't quite positive or kind of hurt your feelings. That happens to me quite often. But knowing how to deal with those and plan for those instances when they do occur helps kind of like alleviate things in the long run. So and then evaluate and adjust. I'm a data person, so after a certain period of time, I do like benchmark reports, and I take a look at how have things gone. Most social media networks have some sort of analytics, a way to kind of measure. Facebook's is very detailed. If you have a blog, you can use Google Analytics. With Twitter, you can just look at the number of followers you've had or how many retweets you've had in a given number of time. And if things are working, great. If you're happy with how things are going, keep doing what you're doing. But if you're not, really look at how the numbers are and come to an analysis, like what could I do different? What could I try? Let's do, instead of posting on Thursdays and Fridays, let's try, Sunday mornings. Knowing who your audience is helps kind of, determine how you're going to change things if that's needed. And then finally, it's important to keep the social on social media. Back to the very beginning, I said social media is any digital space where you can have a conversation with someone. So, you don't have to be very aggressive or active, but don't be passive either. If you find someone that you connect with, don't hesitate to retweet, reply, comment, share their content. That's a huge way of building relationships on an online community. So, and that's pretty much. The Q&A went over a lot of things that we were talking about, so we can get back to that real quick. But if you'd like to connect with me online, I keep LinkedIn and Twitter very professional. That's one thing we talked about earlier. But you can also engage with the museum as well. We're on these 6 different social media networks, and we may go to some new ones. Who knows how things change? So yeah.
Okay. Now that the two of you are done, I have some. We'll go back to questions in a second, but I have a couple of questions, in fact. So we did a lot of sort of broad brush overview stuff. And so what I'm wondering is if you, and I'll try to do one too, give a very specific examples of things you have posted that have provoked high engagement with your users.
Okay. I find that, knowing what's trending online helps. At TMA, we're very focused on our green initiatives. So Earth Day, back in April, I did a post about our solar panel canopy that we have on our parking lot. It's across the whole thing, and we actually have solar panels on that piece of the property and also on our building, the main museum. It's 101 years old, and we have solar panels on top of it. And then, in the past 20 years, we have been able to decrease our energy consumption a substantial amount. We actually return energy back to the grid. So our electric bill is very, very small, which is fantastic. So I did a post about that, and that, I think we had, 300 some likes and an obscene number of shares, because that's something that's very personal to our Facebook audience. It's very local, and they're very proud of the museum and very proud of the things that we do in the community. So it touched upon a nerve. It was very popular and very emotional with them.
Do you think, I saw that post, but I'm wondering, because it reminds me of, do you think some of it was that it was unexpected from an art museum, that all of a sudden you were posting about?
Yeah, we did a little campaign a year ago talking about our solar panels, the first time that the museum went off the grid. And so, we hadn't really talked about it in, 10, 11 months or so. So kind of reminding people of this, and they're like, oh yeah, that's right, the museum is doing all these really cool, unique energy green things at, this 101-year-old building.
Yeah, because we find that things like when we post an opening day, a painting related to baseball for opening day, that is by far the most shared.
Right.
Because it's somehow unexpected that they don't necessarily connect an art museum to baseball, and it makes them, I think they just get surprised, and they share and share and share and share.
Right, like it's so cool, I didn't realize those two things went together.
The people at the art museum even knew baseball existed.
I saw that post too, actually. That was a great one.
So can you give me an example of something?
Well, I spoke on it a little bit earlier. Our Throwback Thursday that we did about a month ago was, it was the Stephen McGee piece. So he was famous for putting like graffiti artists, like full-size mannequins. And so like from 2007, when our building, when he did the piece, he left up a graffiti artist who looks like he's spray painting. And that was a great post. I think that, like you said, it was unexpected that we would post a Throwback Thursday, because normally it's not, it's
pictures
baby pictures,
yeah,
right?
It's baby pictures, exactly.
And people loved it, and they shared it and saved it, and I saw a few people like even have it as their like cover photos now on like Facebook pages and stuff. So it's like, that was a really great one for us.
Yeah, another example, we do share our press releases on our different social media channels, and for some reason, the press release for our video game show coming up had 398 likes, 200 some shares, and it's a press release. Well, the image that went along with it was it was Link from Legend of Zelda. And this show, one of our messages is that it's very nostalgic, and our key audiences are people who, when they were kids, in the mid-'80s, early '90s, they were playing video games, and so they see that and they're like, I can't wait. You're connecting with an audience that kind of maybe forgot about the museum, or they're not, I'm not a museum person, but this show speaks to them.
Right. Can you both explain a little bit how you have built your audiences? And let's just pick Facebook, Twitter, and one new one, we'll do Instagram.
Sure.
And how because I think that's sort of the most overwhelming part for people,
Yeah.
especially if you're not a giant institution who can spend money on ads to generate likes.
Right. So, I've only been at the TMA for a year, but my boss actually was the one who pushed the museum into the social space. So she's spent a lot of time, building the audience on Facebook and Twitter, and a big part of it is sharing good content. So it's letting people know about what's going on, unique things about the museum, things they might not remember or know. And it does take time. Right? That's a big part of it. You're not going to get 20,000 followers within 3 months. If you do, that's awesome. You do something most people can't do, but in reality, that's not the case. In my previous job, we worked for a large, as an ad agency, and we were helping a large furniture manufacturer, build their Facebook audience, and they were not satisfied if they didn't hit, at least 10,000 new fans every month. They're like, you can do that, but you're spending so much money, and it's not organic, it's not real. It's, you're buying things, you're not building relationships.
Yeah, so I'm 8 months at MOCAD, and we actually did just break the 20,000 follower Facebook mark. So that was pretty great.
I
And
have
that-
299,000 followers.
And that was a huge milestone for us, you know. And one of the things that we did is I made sure to make a thank you post, you know, and I put up an image of when we cracked 10,000 Twitter followers, same thing. And I think that being quick and responding to folks has really changed the way that we engage on social media. We've had it for a while, and we have done, to the earlier question, we let a curator team take over the social media accounts last October of 2012, excuse me, which plummeted everybody. They were just not into it.
It's nothing personal.
It was just so it was like, okay, like, let's get back into like being, you know, like having those conversations. You know, using the first person I think is really really exciting for a lot of folks too, at least from the institutional page, and then from a personal standpoint, you know, I followed the rule, like if I wouldn't show my mom, I wouldn't post it on social media. Like my mom's pretty cool, you know, like, but you know, there's certain things that's like, okay, I see that on the internet and that's really great, but I'm not sharing that with the people around me. And I think on your personal page especially, you know, I don't particularly enjoy like pimping MOCAD stuff, but I do it, it's my job. You know, and like to your other question, like representing, you know, your institution, or your place of, you know, like work, there's a certain level that, yeah, you're gonna do that. And that's what social media is about. If your friends don't like it, then they're not your friends. Like if they're not supporting you as you are working to make, you know, an institution better, then okay, don't like my stuff. You know what I mean? Like I've gotten over that like element where it's like, it's scary. It totally is scary to like invite your friends to your opening, you know. But you just get over it, and then they come, and then it's really great because then all your friends are there.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
Yeah. Working at TMA, it's a very large institution. I was really surprised when I started working there how many people that building employs. Being that I can't be in every place at the museum at the same time to document and share these things, so I've been working with some of our other staff members to be kind of our street team, our ambassadors. So our chef, he takes a lot of pictures of food prep and the garden that we have. We have some visitor service girls and in education that, you know, on their breaks they go and they walk around the galleries and they'll take pictures and share them. And my curators are a great team to work with. They know the art, I don't, and they know the great stories behind the works of art. They know the special things, and they know what's going to be interesting to our visitors, to our members, and to our audience. And so they're more than happy to share ideas with me and vice versa. You know, it's an open door with them.
Can you give me, I'm going to start with one, where you've used social media to either get information from your audiences that benefits the curators, or that you've done the opposite, that you've put information out that benefits the curators. And so my example, we are reinstalling our ancient Middle East galleries, and there wasn't budget money for evaluation beforehand. So, you know, the learning and interpretive team, along with the curators, said, we need something to find out. We need to know something. Can you put on Facebook, when you hear the words ancient Middle East, what do you think of? And we left it sit for a day, because if you post a second post on Facebook, your last post goes away. That's an important piece of information. And we pulled a word cloud out with everything. So they had a tool to look at and say, this is what sort of the general population thinks of when they hear these three words.
Yeah, we've done both instances. So we've, you know, asked for people to, do you want to be in a focus group? Help us, you know, we had this brochure about our Artistine art program, and we didn't even know if people were picking up. If they did, were they using it during their walks to the gallery? So we put a call out on Facebook and Twitter for people who want to participate in a focus group. You don't have to be a teacher. You can just be, you know, you can be 18, you can be 75. You know, as long as you've been to the museum and you didn't even have to see the brochure. I mean, that tells us right there that it's not working if you can't even find it. Another instance was this past week. We were doing a new Works on Paper show this summer, and we had this engraving, and there's this game being played in the background. Our curator could not figure, it's like, I don't know what this is. And our exhibitions coordinator was like, why don't we do a little contest on Facebook, and whoever finds the right answer gets their name on the label for the show. And so we put a really big image with the artwork and the detail, and like, is the name of the game challenge. Can you help us name what this game is? And sure enough, someone did, and I talked to her the other day to let her know that she was the winner, and she's like, that was so much fun, great for us mystery people who like to research and solve things. Please do this again in the future. So
yeah, that was a really good example. That might have actually been what inspired my question.
Oh, nice.
What about you, Mike?
So as far as working with the curatorial team, we haven't done anything as specifically set out as far as like if they need something that we go through. But like I said earlier, like we do a lot of stabilizing and collecting of events using social media, especially. So like especially like Twitter is really great for us, and Instagram. So we have the Monster Drawing Rally, which is a really awesome event where artists come in and live draw for an hour, and there's like different sessions. And that was a huge event. Like I killed my phone, my iPad, and my computer because I was just like running around like a madman, like trying to like keep up with everyone sharing and posting and retweeting and everything. And that was like a great night. And then we had, this living document of all of these people that experienced this. And we were able to say thank you for coming. And it was really, really cool to have both a great event where a few hundred people showed up, and then a few thousand people experienced it. That was really great.
All right, we take some more questions.
I'm wondering if you can tell us what backfires. What should you not put on social media? What have you put on that you thought was going to be fabulous and it's not?
Facebook doesn't like it when you link to YouTube.
No, they do not.
No.
Don't do that.
No.
No one
It's a
will see
Google
your
product.
post.
We're not friends. That's a really great question. We've talked about it a couple of times so far about Facebook's change in the algorithm. We do a lot of event promotion for like our Wine by the Glass pavilions on Friday nights, and Facebook's like, that's not good content. And so it's been kind of a challenge for us to explain to other staff, in the past, like, can you put a post about my tour? Can you put a post about this? Like, that's not effective anymore. We have to look at different ways of doing that. So we're actually looking, email, if we segment the list far enough, is that going to be effective? So it's definitely something that we're working with right now.
Do you have anything that went bad?
I think not particularly. I mean, like nothing that has backfired like per se, but like a lot of our news articles, like it's we're sharing it because it's relevant to MOCAD or an artist that's coming up or an artist that visited, and the few folks that do see it, like they go and read it, but there isn't this like stream of like, oh, let's all share this article that's 2 weeks old on New York Times. You know what I mean? I would say that like, things that are archived a little bit tend to do worse. I don't necessarily backfire, but like if it's, it's easier to share something that happened in the last 12 to 24 hours because it's like, wow, I didn't even see that article. That's so great. Let me share that with my friends. Whereas like, oh yeah, I saw that last week.
One thing for us, because we have capacity issues and we have a rather large Facebook base, we have to be really conscious of promoting things that aren't going to make people mad because they can't get in. And that's happened to us a couple times where we've said, come to this thing, and then on Facebook, and then they get there and they can't get in because there's not enough seats, and then they go right back to Facebook and say, why would you tell me about this if I couldn't go? Yeah. So we try to be really conscious about that too. One right here?
Yeah, we got lots.
And then,
Yeah.
You had mentioned some specific times of day that are more effective, and I was wondering if you could reveal all of those. And also, it seems like, Mike especially, you're talking a lot about doing the social networking stuff after 5 p.m., like on the weekends. I'm somebody who's part of the curatorial team here at Cranbrook, but also am sort of the sole proprietor of the social media at the museum. So it's done in my free time. I'm sort of wondering how to create a balance. Any sort of words of advice?
we schedule our weekend
Okay.
posts, just because it did start to get to be a little bit too much for the person who was in charge of it to
So you
have to
can like
devote.
automatically have those things go?
Yeah, there's different tools out there. Facebook lets you schedule within its own platform. There's Hootsuite, there's TweetDeck, there's all kinds of free and not free tools. But
That's where the editorial calendar it becomes key, because you
Okay.
know what you're going to do. And that, I mean, it does mean at some points, if we're at the end of an exhibition and time slots are selling out, I am sitting at home on the computer, sorry, don't drive down to the museum today, there are no more tickets available.
Right, my example of the angry bourbon ticket, Mr. Router, I was actually on vacation last week and dealing with this. So there's times when, the web is real time, you can schedule things and plan things, but you also have to be able to react when things come up.
Yeah, I check our Facebook page at least
Yeah.
30 times a day.
Okay, that's reassuring.
Oh,
But the other question I had about times of day, could
Yeah.
you shed some light on that?
We've actually had a lot of success late at night, actually, like 7 to 9 p.m. You think about it, the lunchtime hour, how many other institutions, brands, people are pushing out their messages because everyone's on lunch. You're competing with that. So kind of look at off times. It might feel weird at first, like why am I posting this at 3:30 in the afternoon? No one, but people are. People have their phones, they have their tablets. People are constantly connected.
We do ours around 5, just because there's so much less traffic at that point. There are so many fewer people posting at that time of day that we don't get as lost in the shuffle of stuff.
I'm a big fan of Buffer, which is also another tool for scheduling, but they are really great about breaking down some of those big data analytics, and that's they do have an updated calendar of what network is easiest when, because everyone's trying to get a hold of you at certain times, it's easier to do things on this day. Avoid Super Bowl Sunday, right?
Unless
those types
you have
of
a very
tips.
clever post that's related to the Super Bowl.
Right, but and it's it's a give and take. It's understanding kind of what's going to happen. If all of your followers, I'm going to go back to the Game of Thrones reference, but that's just because I love it. Some of the best things I've seen from big brands totally hit on a joke the minute it comes out, and there's no way they could have known that it was coming out, and then they react to it, like the Oreos ad with the Superdome, the lights going out. That was the most shared tweet before Ellen, and that was somebody was just on it, and it was Sunday night, right? But it works. So I think that the time of day thing is less, see what works. If Tuesdays at 3 are whoa, what the heck?
The other thing
Use
too,
that.
the other thing to be aware of too is when what audience you're trying to speak to.
Yep.
Parents are on Facebook at a different time than teenagers are on Facebook. And if you go there's actually a giant graphic on the internet somewhere 3 years ago that says what age ranges are on what platforms at what times, including when they're listening to the radio. I keep it on my wall.
I just had a question about your use of Pinterest. It seems, attractive, of course, because it's all about visual imagery, but particularly, I'm interested in how you're utilizing it. Those of you that have, particularly, I guess, Christine and Stephanie, working with institutions with permanent collections, because, I had considered it as an option I work with a fine arts collection, but for one, just going through the terms of agreement, I got so, my head was swirling after a while trying to discern for sure what the ramifications could be if, it's one thing to use works that you have copyright approval for, but again, once you're putting it online, it is traveling, and what are the ramifications for that? I saw some other information online that said that there were really a lot of problems with Pinterest, the use of Pinterest, with works not being properly credited. How do you do that beyond what you put on and then as it migrates?
Sure. I use Pinterest pretty passively. I created the account to make sure no one else created an account to the museum, because someone actually did that on Instagram, and I finally, this last month was able to get our name back, which is awesome. But with Pinterest, we have our works on paper gallery, and we do catalogs for all those shows. And they're mostly all works from our own collection that we have, rights and protections we have the copyright for, we're allowed to. And we decided to do that as a way to get more exposure for those catalogs, because they're online, but they're not, very search engine friendly. Pinterest is a great way to direct traffic to a specific site. So we would do detailed shots of some of the paperworks. The caption is, an abbreviated credit, the artist, the title, and the Ascension number that we have, and then we link it back to that specific online catalog. I've also used it, we've done several Instagram contests since I've been at the museum, so I use it as a way to kind of showcase all the entries that were really great. So they know we only have so many winners, but all the pictures are wonderful, we need to share them somehow. So we use Pinterest for that as well. So they're images that other people have taken, but make sure that we credit them and link back to their Instagram account. So it's all about, you know, sharing content and giving people the proper little spotlight on their own work.
We only use Pinterest for the museum shop right now. We're not using it institutionally. So the shop builds pages, and they have little things in the stores where you can, you know, take a picture of the thing and post it on Pinterest so your husband can buy it for you.
Yeah, that's a great way. We've done that for our museum store as well, especially around the holidays. We had, you know, different, you know, gifts, stocking stuffers, gifts for dad, gifts for artists, that sort of thing, and as a way to get traffic back to the museum store website.
And it takes the burden off of managing it for my department. That's part of why we're just not using it as staff capacity.
Mm-hmm. I have a question on this kind of what could be some of the negative aspects of it. Recently, we all know that Gabriel Garcia Marquez passed away, and we had just opened at the Bard Graduate Center an exhibition on Colombian art and design. And we published a piece in the catalog by Marquez, and we were all talking about it, like, oh my God, he just died. This is probably the last time, you know, he's been published in the United States. And, and actually, a lot of people got all excited about how they could link to this fact. And I felt very uncertain about it, you know, as the chief curator. You know, on the one hand, I felt like when it immediately had come out, maybe we could have tweeted something, you know, a kind of homage. But then once 24 hours passed, I felt like there's no reason to do so. And I was wondering, have you faced that kind of situation? Like, you know, you either make the instantaneous decision or you just let it pass?
Not so much at the museum, but when I was at the agency, that was one thing that we would coach and train our different clients on how to deal with that. You know, there is a shelf life. There's only a certain window of time. And, you know you're in your gut if it's going to be good or bad, you know, for the most time, especially something as sensitive as that. You know, it's, once again, anything that you put out online is essentially out there forever. I remember during the revolution in Egypt, Mark Jacobs was posting things on Twitter, and they weren't very, you know, they say, buy my shoes, because Egypt, all, like, the new line launch, look at Egypt, how Egypt's reacting to it, like, very not cool. You know, there's major turmoil, and he's trying to capitalize it to sell shoes, you know, like, so definitely there's a taste factor involved.
I mean, I would say in your case, immediately would have been good, 24 hours not so good, 2 weeks later, probably okay.
We had, so Gary Grimshaw passed away last fall, and he was a major contributor and supporter, family member for the MOCAD family. And so our board wrote a very heartfelt press release that it was in that not immediate but 24-hour window that we were able to get that out, which was really, really good. We were able to respond to it, address it. Our Gary Grimshaw prints, you know, like, started to sell like crazy, you know, online, and that was like, you know, like, yes, we did enjoy like some benefit from that, but it was more about respecting the artist, and I totally understand your point to it. We actually ended up hosting his funeral, so 2 weeks later we actually had another press release about that, and it was gorgeous and it was amazing, but amazing in a respectful way. But
a specific instance, and this is not related really to capitalizing on, but sort of monitoring what the social media sphere is doing and not being the one, you don't want to be the one who doesn't say something about something happening. When the school shootings happened in Connecticut, it became clear that everyone, every museum, every library, everyone was posting something, and we had to sit and think, we found some Nelson Mandela quote about kids in a nice peaceful work of art.
Yeah, we did something similar. We had a painting of a rainy day in Boston, and, you know, our condolences too during the Boston bombing.
But those are things you don't really anticipate having to do when you're running social media for a museum.
Right.
I had a question. If my museum secures permission to reproduce an image on their website, and say I have a personal Instagram account, because I work for my institution, can I use that image, or do I need to seek separate permission for my personal account, or do I just need to clear it with my museum? Or how does that work where it's personal, but you're a representative of the museum and the museum has access to the image?
I think if your museum has permission, it's fine.
Okay.
It's a great question, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't need to get any separate
No.
permission,
No.
but I should acknowledge it's from the museum.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Credit line.
Back here?
Can you address communication fatigue, the idea that you may have too many communication channels, just based on personal experience, like dealing with members or people who are very involved with a museum? I'm starting to run into that, I didn't know this was happening, are you sending me a letter? Is it on the web? Is it on the general museum calendar? The Twitter feed, and sort of streamlining or prioritizing our ways of communicating with particularly dedicated members of the sort of museum family.
Yeah, I'll talk to that one, because being a very small team, I feel that quite a bit, and a big part of it is working on the editorial calendar and getting it so that it's institution-wide, so that when you do have, a press release that needs to go out, but you're working on social media for the day, you can kick it to somebody else, to proofread, or to do the first draft, and then you jump in and help out with that. We're fortunate that a lot of our people at MOCAD, at least, are multifaceted and willing to help out and work. We're a smaller group, so we have to. And people are good. I would say that if you're dreaming about Facebook posts though, probably time to take a step back, because
Yeah, you're looking at the recipient, right?
Yeah.
We stopped using Flickr.
So did we.
Yeah. At some point, it just sort of it just sort of dies a slow, relatively painless death. You just decide if we're going to pick. We're at a point now. If we pick something up, we have to let something go.
Right. And it goes back to one of my takeaways, evaluate and adjust. If you're seeing that, we're not generating the content needed for this platform, or we are and no one is, engaging with it, is it worth continuing? And if it is, how do we change things? And it's okay to, stop doing something. It's not, if no one's looking at it, you're not going to be losing a big part of your online community. Mm-hmm. And chances are that they're seeing your messaging in multiple places if you're using different platforms, you're using your website, you're using email. You're using signage in your museum as well.
And that goes back to my original point about knowing your audience and your purpose. If you're trying to get somebody in the door for your event tonight, you're going to want to go to your social media channels and blast them. Mm-hmm. But if you want somebody to mark on their calendar your gala in the fall, you're probably going to want to email them so they take a minute to look at it and understand it, or save it, or print it, or click it into their digital calendar.
Right.
You're not going to Facebook post something 6 months out.
We also won't put Facebook post items with a high ticket price. That gets a lot of blowback from the audience. If I had $1,000, I could go. Yes.
Okay. So I just want to follow up on the question that I asked before, because so now from your answer and the answer from my colleague, I can see how, a curator could.
Okay. I'll repeat the question for people who
I can
can't
see how a curator could post, interesting images and just sort of put their thinking out there, and that it's not a PR thing. It's really just engaging with the community. So the next question is, so now though the worry is about the maintenance of that in terms of the time. What if you're someone who wants to communicate a little bit, but not a lot? I don't want to get sucked into, I want to put something out, challenge people to think a little, then sort of do it in my own time again, have a little bit of response. I don't want to be tending it, but I don't want to be rude to the people who suddenly think I'm their new best friend on social media.
I'll let you take
Yeah,
that
sure.
one.
You can always put together a brief, this is how, this page operates essentially. We have a Facebook policy letting people know, we get back to you as soon as we can. We don't allow posts about this or that. Having some parameters and being transparent with people. And this is what I do during the day, and this is kind of my hobby. So just make people aware that this isn't you're not waiting for the comments to come through. Yes.
Well, and I think too, once you get to a point where there's enough people where they're starting to have a conversation with each other, that burden comes off of you a little bit. We are at a point now, particularly with our Facebook page, where we have to look at the comments all day, every day, to make sure nobody's saying anything horrible. but we're not having to participate as much as we had to before because people are answering other people's questions.
It's more like you're monitoring the community rather than trying to, initiate conversation.
And to what you were saying, our guest curator, Jens Hoffman, who I don't think made it, but he's really fun, like on Instagram. He'll post like 7 photos from our exhibitions, and then he'll have 2 months where he doesn't post anything. It's not a hard and fast rule as an individual, to curate these things. Now, as organizations, we want to make sure that we are being engaging all the time. But as a curator, as an individual, you're free to do as you want.
You're not going to lose people by not posting. You're not going to gain people, though. I mean, I don't know. Like if I was silent for a week, I wouldn't worry that my Facebook fan base, people aren't going to bother to go click on like because they didn't hear from me. They're just not going to hear from me.
So can you just, because I think, judging from some of the questions, I think there's a level of understanding of Facebook and all this that people do have or don't have.
Sure.
So, just even talking about the liking, I remember when this all first started, people say, oh, make sure you like, the Wolfsonian tomorrow when you get your Facebook open. And I'd be like, why? I mean, I work there. Why should I like them? I didn't understand that the liking. No, well, I'm devoting my 24/7 to this place. Why do I have to like it on Facebook? Because I'm not a big Facebook person. But I didn't understand at the time that liking makes your posts some rise. But you were saying that that's no longer the case, or how does
Facebook is essentially determining what it's going to show people who have opted in to receive content from you. So beforehand, basically they were seeing everything. Well, now Facebook is saying if your content isn't engaging or good enough, you're going to have to put some money behind that post to reach, a larger percentage of your followers, of your fans.
So, but that's more institutional then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, you're still going to see your friends like lunch picture, right? But yeah, but like the
It's
post
more
about
business page, essentially, not personal. So yeah.
I guess I'm doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got a couple up there.
Hi. I was just wondering if you can point to any information you have from your individual institutions or sort of museums in general that show the effectiveness of social media in terms of bringing people to museums to visit the permanent collection, special exhibitions, or drawing like non-traditional museum audiences. Is there info that you guys have collected or that have been sort of studied in general from museums or nonprofits?
We have a very specific example of driving attendance through social media. When we this would have been like March of 2012. We were just shy of 100,000 Facebook fans. And we ran a promotion on Facebook that if we hit 100,000, every single one of our Facebook fans would get free admission to the museum. This was back when you had to pay to go. Would get free admission for the month of March for as many times as they wanted to come. We tripled our admission that month, and we hit, people love contests, and they love being better than someone else. Like if the days that I would be like, we've almost passed the Smithsonian, can you go? They would go and tell everyone to like the page, my things would go up. They love beating other, especially in the city, they really like to beat other places. So yeah, we hit the 100,000, I think 3 weeks earlier than we had planned to. And saw a massive increase in our attendance that month. And the other ways we've used it for sort of audience building is if we know that we have an exhibition coming in a year that is going to be interesting to Latino audiences, I will use my paid Facebook advertising to start building likes with people who have identified as those audiences. We did an animation exhibition, and I spent the 6 months in advance, ads getting fed to people who like video games and, cartoons and Pixar, and so we've, used those sort of tools too. Do you have?
I'm trying to think.
Attendance building example?
For a specific exhibition, perhaps, everyone knows the weather this year was not fun. And we kind of anticipated winter weather being an issue, getting an audience for our Art at a Loose Kulick Garden exhibition that some of you guys saw on Sunday. So one of our things was, come to the garden when it's, cold and gray and gross outside. Well, we end up being closed a lot because of the weather. So we would actually see, when we were allowed to go outside once the level 3 was up, we actually saw a spike in attendance because we had this beautiful green indoor space that felt like it was springtime, while outside it was, negative 30 degrees out, right? So it was kind of a combination of anticipating and planning for this sort of crisis that could happen and using that to our benefit.
I was wondering, actually, when you were talking about increasing attendance, do you have any statistics or anything like that about retention? Because you said that you had, a huge spike in attendance for that month.
Mm-hmm.
Has your membership department sort of tracked that and seen how that sort of played out over the next few months? How many of them became members, that kind of thing?
I don't have specific numbers, but this show in particular has, because of the benefit of having this, thing to do when it's really cramming out, people are seeing an additional value to the museum. So we have seen an increase in new membership. So I don't have specific numbers, but our visitor service team is definitely tracking that.
Yeah, I was also wondering.
Yeah, well, we were in a little bit of a different, an unusual situation. That happened in March. The millage passed in August, and after that, admission was free for residents of the 3 counties. So, and we did see a drop in membership when that happened, which we anticipated because people who'd been paying to get into the museum for free didn't have to anymore. So it's because of the circumstances, it's harder for us to do a correlation there.
I have a question about what kind of information do you want to get from curators? I mean, you all work in marketing, and we've heard a lot about the marketing side of this, but what do you want, what kind of curatorial voice do y'all want to have? And do your curators just come up to you and say, hey, this painting was done by a guy, whatever? Or do you go on tours and get your information, or what do y'all prefer?
I like it both ways, essentially. I have a few curators who are more than happy to share ideas or suggestions, or this painting's going back on view for a limited time, things I wouldn't know about because I'm not in the curatorial world. So that's absolutely crucial. But there's times when things are trending, when Pantone really announces its color of the year. I'm like, that's a great thing to talk about. Curators, find me anything that has purple in it, and kind of building a Pinterest board around that. So we have a great collaboration with them.
More a comment than a question. I'm Graham Betcher from the Birmingham Museum of Art, and when I arrived at the Birmingham Museum of Art back in 2006, we didn't have a social media manager. We do now. I was a longtime Facebook user. I was at Yale, and right after it left Harvard, it was rolled out at a couple other Ivies, and so I was using it almost from the beginning. And so I started posting information about museum events on my Facebook page, and our web managers noticed these curious spikes in our web traffic, and they're like, what could this be? And since they were all friends of mine on Facebook, they decided to look, and to the minute it coincided with when I was posting about museum events. And so then that's when we started to take it very seriously and thought, aha, we ought to have someone managing this full time, which we now do. And I think it's something really, really important for all museums to think about if you don't have someone already, because it yields all sorts of benefits, not just attendance in terms of through the door traffic, but also traffic to your website. If you've got databases of your objects, we've seen increased numbers of loan requests for objects in our collection because people find out about it coming to our website, people in our field. But also we get probably a few messages a month through Facebook, either through our museum Facebook page or personally through my personal Facebook page about donations to the collection. One caveat I did want to mention, though, is that as curators, for those of us who maintain personal Facebook presences where we're very active and there's not a huge barrier between our personal self and our curatorial self, sometimes you can get into awkward situations where when you're friending trustees, patrons, major donors, and maybe people that aren't very well schooled in sort of the rules of the road when it comes to social media, and I've had to school some people very gently, and let them know that when you post on my wall, it's like putting a sign in my front yard. And I had to do that recently, and it's much kinder to do that than defriend someone and give them the chance to correct their behavior first. But there are some pitfalls, but I think that the benefits far outweigh the negatives at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anna Marie Sawkins. I'm an independent curator based in Milwaukee. My question is, what qualifications do you think that PR and media people should have within museums, and how can you coach some of us to coach some of our outdated press people?
That's a tricky one.
I'll let you guys take that one.
Oh, boy.
Can you give me a specific example? Can you give her the mic back?
Please, thank you.
So, an institution that I've worked with recently, which must remain nameless.
Yes.
So they did a really nice postcard for the exhibition, and they made it electronic. And there was an opportunity for funding for the exhibition if there was a hot link on the electronic invite, and there was just nobody who knew how to do that. So, a missed opportunity.
That's a staffing issue more, I think, than anything. I know that there's still plenty of museums who are not where they need. We're not, frankly, we're not where we need to be technology-wise. I don't think anybody would.
Yeah, I mean, my position was a new position.
We can't put a link in an email.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, before I started the museum last year, our department had 1.5 people, our director, and then our media person was part-time. And, seeing the amount of importance that digital and online environments had, finally they're like, yes, we need to bring someone in. So we actually have 4 people on our department now. Myself, we have a marketing coordinator who does print and online along with me. And both our other coworkers are very efficient online because they kind of had to learn it to do what they had to do on behalf of the museum. So it's, like I said, it's more of a staffing issue, it sounds like.
To answer your quick question, I always use screenshots and step-by-step directions when I need some things like that. Certainly when I'm sending like high-res images, we'll use like WeTransfer. A lot of people the unarchiving process is foreign to them. So I'll make sure to like either link or just take the screenshots of like, here's how you do this. Because I know that I'm like right with it, but that's not for everybody. So it's an easy way. I think we had a question here. Yeah?
Talk about Facebook and YouTube. You said Facebook doesn't like, YouTube doesn't like Facebook?
Oh, yeah.
Facebook prefers that you embed the video directly into Facebook. So just like you would attach a photo to a Facebook post that you go get off your desktop, they want that video to live on your desktop and then for you to upload it directly to Facebook rather than linking. Facebook doesn't want you to leave Facebook. Or anyone to leave Facebook. They want you to spend all of your time there.
Right.
So if they have to click a YouTube video to see it, then they're off Facebook, and now they're on YouTube, and now they're going to spend 7 hours watching cat videos on YouTube instead of on Facebook.
Google 1, Facebook 0.
That's a fairly new. I mean, it's been the past couple of years that's really
happened.
become, because Facebook didn't have the ability to embed video until fairly recently. So now we still use YouTube, but if we're going to show a video, we upload it directly to Facebook.
And YouTube's owned by Google, right? And Google and Facebook are warring to control your life. So.
Yeah, we mistakenly posted a YouTube video last week, and it was as though we didn't even post it. I mean, you could just 0 people saw it.
But we posted a concert video, and that was one of our best posts from last week. Yeah. So it's kind of give or take. Like we had a great show, and a bunch of people who came to this show reposted it, and so it was off. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to do that, and most of the time it doesn't. But sometimes, that right timing will work for you. And back there.
I'm Rachel Dalfia from the Carnegie in Pittsburgh.
I have a question that relates to the personal, professional, and also really brings it back home to curators as opposed to the institutional message. And that is that I think we've long been aware as curators and as museums that we have the privilege, the ability, the power to confer cultural capital. And one of the things that has made me somewhat wary of personal use of social media is the, what happens as a byproduct of me, liking a contemporary artist's work, or even like a potter that I see at a local arts festival that I personally really enjoy, but that I do not intend to endorse with the weight of my curatorial position and my institution behind it. And I just wonder if anybody has any thoughts or experience or policy or anything related to this, particularly dealing with the contemporary, the marketplace, the ability to effectively endorse with social media as a curator.
You don't want the potter to show up at the museum with their pot asking when you're going to put it in the collection.
Well, I don't want him to show up at, and say, here, do you want this for the collection? But I also, you also don't want him to then have on his Facebook page, such and such a curator likes my work.
Right.
It's just being aware, and I know particularly relating to the marketplace, museums have long been aware of this conflict of interest. I mean, it's something we take into consideration when we borrow art from private collections. And for me, the digital realm is just kind of an untested and confusing place for this, and what power and kind of unintended weight the curatorial voice has in that world. I don't know if anybody has thoughts on this. It's probably more towards the curators than to the institutional voices, which are promoting the museum's work, as opposed to what happens when we like or promote or tweet or Instagram the work of living artists, or something work that's with a dealer, or those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think, we talked a little bit about disclaimers, incorporating that into your experience. I think with, in the instance of liking the pot, maybe there's a way for, again, sort of going back to the educational approach as opposed to the endorsement or opinion approach. Maybe you do like the pot, but maybe there's a way for you to connect the pot to, something else that's in your collection or in another museum that doesn't necessarily come so much across as I like this pot, but look at how this pot that you might, our mission is to create experiences for visitors to find personal meaning in art. And if that means that I can have somebody at an art fair in Ann Arbor look at a pot and make a connection, oh, I like this pot, to something in my collection, I've helped them do that. Like they have, been able to engage with art on a very personal level that they can put in their house that is, even tangentially connected to something in the museum. But yeah, I can see where there's, I think it goes back to the maybe less opinion, more
documenting.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
All right, okay, there's one more question, then I have one last question for my.
Oh, sorry, I feel like maybe just to clarify that last question, I feel like it maybe has something more to do with curatorial ethics than with sort of publicity strategies. Yeah. For example, people taking photographs of objects that they see at Maastricht that they love. And what does that then mean for the dealers who are offering those things for sale?
Yeah.
But maybe that's a conversation.
That might be a whole nother panel discussion next year. Okay, so I have one last question for my team here. We spent a lot of time talking about the big five. So 2 questions. If you had to recommend one platform for a curator to be on, they could only manage one, what would you recommend? And then also, where do you think they should go next outside of these 5? So I wanted to know if one platform sort of amongst what we've talked about, and then where they think things would go next after this.
My recommendation would be Instagram. It's a growing social platform. There's not a whole lot of rules yet to it, and it's fun. and creative, and it's easy.
I'm gonna
and
Instagram them all right now.
I know, I could
I'm
just.
just gonna do that. I'm gonna do it right
Phone's
now.
down there. But I mean, it's from an institutional standpoint, it's been a great way for us to build relationships with our young community in Toledo. We have a group of people that call themselves IGers Toledo, and we've had meetups at the museum, and they've come and they've taken some amazing photographs of our collection, of our Paris-style theater, and they love to do it. Like, there's no twisting any arms. They're already there, or they're planning on coming, and it's a great way to, show the collection, show the works in a way that, we might not have thought of it before. Why don't you answer that, and then we'll go back to
I'm
the
going to
second
put a
question.
really terrible filter on it, too.
That was
See.
that was going to be my first choice for sure. I
Yeah.
think I'm going to put in another pitch for Tumblr. I found a lot of artists that I really enjoy there, just like because I use it as my own platform as well. So as far as being a curator, I think that might offer some really great. The legwork's done for you. You know what I mean? It's there. And like I follow a lot of artists there personally, and then I do actually have to think about we don't follow a lot of artists specifically as MOCAD because it's an institution and we're not trying to endorse that. Like we're like keeping an eye on them. I can check in with it and like as a person, as my own individual. But I would say that one. Do you want to talk about where it's going? I'm sorry. I would say Instagram would have been my first choice, but I think my next one will be Tumblr, because it is there. It's again photocentric, but like it's content that's given to you, and you can do some filtering. You can follow Contemporary Art Daily, you can follow Blue Info, and it's like it's that stream of news as well as a piece that an artist might have just finished like that day, or in progress piece, which is really cool and like.
It's a very flexible blogging platform. You can do long form essays, you can do photos, you can do video, you can do essentially a tweet. Like it's all up to you and however you want to use it. And there's a gazillion, that's the official number of themes and templates that there are, free and paid. So it's a lot of opportunity once again to be creative and to share your voice in a way that works best for you.
Is there a hashtag for this conference? Thank you.
And then
Now you can all find it.
part of that
What do you
question?
think? What do you think they should keep their eye on next?
I would video. The online space is becoming very visual. I said it before, and phones and tablets are becoming much more advanced. And the phone on my camera is better than the camera on my phone is better than the camera I used when I was in college. Like it's just the megapixels are so much more. So you're going to be able to do video in the palm of your hand and share it. Instagram does video. There's Vine, which is a very short 6-second segments. YouTube, Vimeo, and the space is constantly changing. 10 years ago, MySpace was all the rage, and all the bands were using it, and all the kids were there, and there's people still there, I hear, but I am not one of them. But who knows? 10 years from now, what shape is Facebook going to be? Are they going to be around? If they are they going to be the same? They're not going to be. You're seeing Google and Yahoo and Facebook acquiring all these startups and all these different apps. How is that going to change the space? So it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I was just going to say, actually, like just it's almost a regression, but I think like honest blogging. I think like real writing. For so long, we saw people not think of the internet as a space that you can read long form, but with like new instances, I'm gonna shout out Medium here, especially for the art folks. There are great publishing that's just like bare bones. Like this is about the writing and a couple of pictures, and you can subscribe to lots of folks. You can subscribe to RSS and blogs that are out there, but then they have like reposts. And I think that one is going to be really exciting, especially for curators. I think that can offer a lot more like contextual information. I know, like for me personally, like I do a lot more like fitness blogging there. Medium, and it was a limited release last year, and then just went fully public in the last 6 months or so. And that's got it's got everything from high-end writers to 14-year-olds talking about their girlfriends, But it's one of those things that, I'm sorry about the pun, but you have to curate, right, like who you're going to follow. But you can really like be an effective way, I think, for long form writing to be kind of like the next online surge after video.
No, but you bring up a good point, just from a web design standpoint as well. You're with HTML5 and things like that, like your web experience is also changing. You're finding websites are a little more flat, and there's infinite scrolling, and before you know it, things are coming from the left and the right, and you're just, web pages now are totally different than they were 3, 5, 10 years ago. So like I said, the space is constantly changing, things are becoming more integrated. So we don't have all the answers. I don't think anybody ever will, but it's just good to be informed and keep an eye on trends and things like that.
All right. I want to sort of on behalf of those of us who are local and semi-local, tell you how grateful we are that you came here this year. It was great to have everyone here. I hope everyone enjoyed all of our museums this year.
Thank you. Thank you.